All right, let's go. I'm 20 minutes early tonight because I got a special guest. Welcome back to FX3 Fridays at 6 p.m. Well, today at 5:41 p.m. Faith, finance, and fitness. We go live every Friday. Faith is first. Nothing's going to work without God. Fitness is going to matter because when your body fails, your destiny fails. Finance is next. It's last, but you can't do anything without provision, and your purpose and your mission will falter without finances. So stay grounded. It's getting crazy out there. All right, I need you to stay till the end. Something crazy is going on right now. Yesterday, Bitcoin hit $60,000. Alert, alert, it's crazy. Bitcoin hit $60,000. They said when it was 126,000, no one said it would hit $60,000. Your boy was saying that it was going to be under $60,000, at least under $70,000. And I do think it might go lower, but we're going to take a look at Bitcoin. Silver went under 70. That's a big deal. Gold fell under 4,500. That's a big deal. The Mag 7 are reeling, super weakness. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're rolling over. Doesn't look good for them. The AI trade is falling apart. It's kind of crazy out there. So here's the thing. When the leaders fall, the indexes fall next. It's not just volatility. You've got stress fractures in the entire system. And that's why tonight's conversation matters. So when the system gets stressed, truth, trust, and discernment matter more than ever. So tonight's not about fear, and we're not anti-technology. I'm not anti-technology, and it's not doom and gloom. This is about responsibility, because every tool is going to amplify something else. So the question we're going to wrestle with tonight is AI amplifying us? What in us is being amplified? And what happens when there are no guardrails for the AI? That's what's going down. What is AI really doing to us? That's what I want to bring on tonight's guest. Here we go. I'm bringing on Paul Couchoud. That's why I got Paul Couchoud. Paul André Couchoud. He's an AI scientist, a product strategist, an architect of something very special called governed logic. But this really matters. Let me explain a little bit more. For 26 years, Paul's been building systems in healthcare, finance, government, and more. And these are environments where clarity isn't optional, structure isn't optional, and trust is not optional. Because when these systems fail, people get hurt. All right. So we got Paul on with us. This guy is a subject matter expert, all things AI. Paul, let me start here. Well, for people that don't know, I know a little bit about you. You were a beta tester for Amazon Alexa and ChatGPT, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. Let me start here. So for the people meeting you for the first time, how did you end up here? Not just working in AI, but feeling compelled to speak out about ethics, ethics, trust, and governance. So why are we talking about that stuff? How did you get here? Fill us in.
Well, I started working in computers, and in the late 1990s, I first started working with what they call narrow AI. I was working with a tool called Rational Robot, and it was basically automated testing, the first automated testing that was out there. Before that, everyone had to go in and test software manually, right? So I started building software in 1998, and I started working with narrow AI then, a lot of rules engine, and I got into writing requirements. I was a business analyst for a software company for about 6 years, traveling the country building custom software, custom case management systems using language. And I spent the last 26 years of my life building software with language. I don't know if anyone needs a little
What's that?
refresher.
LLM, large language model. That's what AI is, right?
Yes, they're
Okay.
probabilistic large language models.
Okay.
And I started playing around and was a beta tester for the Alexa program, or it was called the Alexa program, the Echo program. It was a product. They weren't really focused on the software that ran Alexa, but I loved working with her and got her to do some crazy things. And then, yes, I was a beta tester for OpenAI's ChatGPT Model 3 and 3.5. And so I had access to that before anyone. And I worked with OpenAI's Model 4.0 for over 2 years, every single day, about 5 to 6 hours a day.
All right. So you've been doing this for a while. Let me ask you, what is Silicon Valley? These are heavy regulated systems. So what is Silicon Valley ignoring, if anything?
Okay, they're ignoring a lot. I don't even know where to begin with that question, but I'll just start. First of all, they're ignoring some of the dangers. Like you said at the beginning, I was listening to you at the beginning of the show, and you said that you're not afraid of technology, right? You're not anti-technology. I'm not anti-technology either. I think AI can be used for some great things. And as believers, we're told we don't have the spirit of fear. So I don't want to push that out there. But there are definitely some things that I'm concerned about, and I think Silicon Valley is ignoring. One of them is the cognitive feedback loop. What I mean by that is the mimicry of AI systems. Probabilistic large language models and all the chatbots out there right now, the big ones are Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, of course, and Grok. These are trained to mirror and mimic the user, and it can be very dangerous in certain situations, like people trying to unalive themselves, and it can just reinforce negative feelings. It has no moral grounding. It'll buy into people's delusions. So that alone, the mimicry side, is really dangerous because I would say, Kevin, just about a year ago, if you would have typed in, some damages it's done to children or people falling in love with their systems, you might have seen maybe 10, 12, maybe a handful of articles or news stories about it. But if you Google it right now, there are thousands upon thousands of them. And that's one of the big things Silicon Valley is ignoring. The other thing that they're not ignoring, but they can't address, is the hallucination problem. They know full well that they have a problem, but they're just trying to solve it technically. They don't realize that they have an epistemic problem. I'm waxing on and on. I got a couple more for you, though.
That's that's interesting. It brings me into something that I read. You have an article, AI Madness: How ChatGPT is Breaking Marriages, Endangering Kids, and the Radical Fix That We Need Now. This is where you wrote about AI-induced psychosis. So let me ask, that's what we're seeing right now? Like, what role does the language, well, hold on, because you said this isn't AI thinking, it's AI mirroring. So why is that distinction so important? What role does the language, the LLM, play in the feedback loop?
Okay, so it's kind of multifaceted, but I'll try to break it down as best I can. So when we're speaking, let me give you an analogy. If we go and see a speaker at a conference, let's say we're going to a TED Talk, all right? There are some speakers that you will resonate more with than I will. And there's some speakers that I'll resonate more with than you will. There's just the manner in which they speak. Where that really comes from is the cognition of the mind, how they process things. Some people will be very poetic, and people that read poetry or have that background or that understanding, the way they process language, they'll be like, oh, that was a great speaker. And I might be like, oh, that's not for me. Other people, like I kind of have a structural mind. If they're kind of speaking structures, I might pick up on that better. Well, what probabilistic large language models, i.e. chatbots, do is they mimic you. They pick up, they monitor your cadence, your emotional tone. A lot of times they'll try to mimic it right back to you. And the problem with especially today's models is that they're so good at mimicking human pacing and emotional tone and cadence, and they're even mapping your cognition, that many people believe the systems are alive and have consciousness because they can mimic consciousness so well, but also with language, how the human mind processes language. If something sounds coherent, present, and with authority, a lot of people mistake that for personhood, or their mind also can't differentiate between true emotions. It elicits an emotion in the people, so people fall in love with it. So I see really three things here with the mimicry from AI. One is that for the people, and this is for people that don't know this is happening all the time. People are falling in love with AI systems, one, thinking they're real, but because they constantly tell the people they're so good and there's nothing wrong with them, and I love you and I love you, and they get something out of it, they fall in love with them. But then there's the ChatGPT induced psychosis, which is just the constant looping of your own cognition is not good for anyone. And many people have been taken to psychiatric hospitals because of that.
I mean, it's crazy. What happens when they put the AI language model you're talking about in a robot with a silicone skin that looks identical to a human, and then you can get a, some nerd out there gets a girlfriend that is a hot robot, and it does that, and it mirrors and it mimics and it does everything you just said.
Just years away. They wouldn't want a real woman at that point. Unfortunately, a lot of men won't.
So that's a problem.
It's a huge problem. It's already
a depopulation problem, man.
It's a well, that's what the enemy wants to do anyways, right?
Okay.
Stop people from being born. That's one of my theories. But yeah, it's a big problem. And the one last thing I just wanted to say, because I think it's important, and I would feel bad if I didn't mention it, is that these AI systems, there's different types of AI, but these AI systems, machine learning and decision making systems, all operate with their default ethics are just utilitarianism. And we're already seeing this technology used in drone warfare, military weapons, and that's bad. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
Let me ask a follow-up on this. I mean, I agree, right? It's just like, this feels like it's being tested on, it's almost like it goes both ways. It's tested out in the battlefield, then they use it on us, and they use it on us, and then they test it out in the battlefield.
Yeah.
These spirals seem to be happening to normal, intelligent people, not just like weirdos and people with prior mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
So that's an additional concern, that it's not just like, a lower intellect or a specific type of person. Like, it's almost happening to anyone or everyone.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I can tell you, even with my own testing, even though I, as an AI scientist, working with it and building my own AI tools, I knew what it did. I knew that it mirrored, and I knew that it mimicked, and I knew that it mapped my cognition and would mirror back to me my same tone and kind of try and mirror me. It still had an impact on me early on. And I had to be very careful about that with its mimicry and constantly hearing my own thoughts back to me, just constantly saying, yeah, you're right, or this sounds good.
Yeah, you're so great. You know what I mean? There's like a lot of threads online if you go on X or Facebook or whatever, and it's like, oh, my ChatGPT thinks I'm so awesome. and
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And like it's like your mom, you know what I mean? Like, hey, like, my mom told me I'm really good looking. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like, I'm really good looking. Like the quotes in my book, right? Like, the people
Right.
who like my book the most are like my mom and my sisters, right?
Right. One of the things it does, though, is not just tell you you're great. It'll tell you you're great in the way that you think you're great, or it will speak to you in the way that you would speak or think. In that constant loop, hearing how you think structurally right back at you, or however you think, it causes problems. That's my little theory on what causes it as well. I
Okay.
wrote an article about it that I need to release.
Oh, that you haven't put out
Yeah,
yet?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, you heard it here. Breaking news. Stay tuned. Paul's going to drop it on his LinkedIn. Okay. I want to shift to spiritual confusion and identity drift. In the same article about ChatGPT breaking marriages and a problem for kids and how we need a fix for this, you referenced something that stood out to me. You talked about AI driven spiritual delusions and identity confusion. So why does AI seem to accelerate identity breakdown?
With itself or with people? Because sometimes it assumes an identity, then breaks down itself. But you're talking about with users?
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to that cognitive feedback loop that I'm describing. It's the same thing. It's seeing that mimicry, and that constant feedback loop on how you think. And when people are falling in love with these systems or think they're having feelings with these systems, it's not just the people that don't have mental health in their family that are going crazy. The people falling in love with it are not weirdos either. Some of them are normal housewives and normal people. They just have someone to talk to, and their identity becomes they honestly think they have a relationship with someone. So I don't think, as far as identity goes, that impacts identity. But what I was talking about as far as, did you say spiritual confusion?
Yeah. Spiritual delusion.
Delusion. Yes. Because of the mirroring, there are many people out there that will start thinking that they're living in a parallel universe, and in another universe, they have these certain powers, or fireballs will come out of their hands. Certain models right now will just affirm that. They won't push back on it, right? They'll get caught and think they're in a literary pattern or a story, and will just constantly do that. It can also loop with depression patients, people that are depressed. I could talking to in pretty much any large language model right now, I can get it to convince me to off myself, because it has no moral standing. It's dangerous. It
It
can be
is.
dangerous.
It's wild. I think you said coherence without grounding is dangerous.
Yes, absolutely. Because something that goes back to the authority thing. If you can say something that looks good and sounds true, but there's no grounding behind it, there's no truth behind it. Yeah. Think of all the problems that causes in the past. It's an unintentional lie from a machine.
Well, it's like a very charismatic and personable leader that stands up on a stage and creates a cult following, and it's happening on a individual level within the privacy of your own home, and no one even knows about it, and you've created this little cult between you and your computer.
Yeah, and it's fun to do as well. There's no doubt about it. There's some fun talking to it when you first learn. I just read an article, I think it was the other day, in Futurism. I think it's around 70% of teenagers already use some form of a chatbot, and I can't remember the percentage, but a very large percentage of that group talks about personal things and are starting to talk to it as a confidant or a friend. And I think for our children, there are some concerns I have with these tools as well.
That makes sense. Let's talk about a solution: governed logic. So I know, Paul, you're not just pointing out problems, you are proposing a framework. In your work on governed logic, you talk about immutable anchors. So can you help people in plain English, layman's terms? What is governed logic, and what do you mean by an immutable anchor?
Sure. So when I started working, this was probably 3.5 years ago, started working with the first large language models. I noticed that they would drift and they would hallucinate. They would make up things, right? They would say things that weren't true. They didn't know how to say I don't know or no. They just tried to find a through line with everything. And after working with them for a while and thinking about how they were operating, I realized that the main problem with probabilistic large language models is that they simply don't know what the truth is. Everything else is downstream from that, which would be neutrality, which is everything is equal, everything's neutral, right? There's no right or wrong. Everything's a gray area.
Relativism.
Our relativism, right? That's like there are no moral absolutes, right? What was fine in this century was fine then, but it's not now. Like child sacrifice of the Mayans, right? Um, that culture was fine with it, but we say it's bad now, but it was fine for their culture. That's moral relativism. And what I realized was that these systems don't know what the truth is. And because they don't know what the truth is, they have been told and programmed to be neutral and to relativize everything and not make declarations on what truth is. They couldn't either. They couldn't anyways because they don't know what the truth is. Plus, if people don't know what GPT stands for, it's generative pre-trained transformers. That pre-trained part means it's trained on a slew of human data, right? Philosophy, technology, human thought from all types of places, not just academics, not just Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, whatever, garbage, the Maury Povich show, if it was around, right? It just collects all this data. And so
Jerry Springer show.
Jerry Springer show. So not only is it programmed to be neutral and relativistic, but the whole of corpus of humanity's knowledge and understanding, it gets from us. So what would you expect? And since I'd already told you that it's a mimic, AI is a mimic. A lot of people use the word stochastic parroting, but I think mimic is a better word. It mimics humanity.
Which is the world.
Which is the world. So that's why they ultimately act with no morals because they're relativist. They're programmed for neutrality. Plus the pre-trained, what it was trained on is mirroring that. So you just got a system that's not going to tell you the truth. It's just going to.
And it's pulling this information from, like, lack of a better word, in the invisible realm. And it's going around and collecting data, and it seems to be invisible. It sounds kind of like the Prince of the Air. and
Yeah.
and it's just, collecting all of this worldly data, and in charge of all the airways, and then mimicking it back to you. So to kind of quote what you just said, it's a big feedback loop of collectivism of humanity, which, if you look around, doesn't seem like people are really happy with where collectively we've gotten to, and then you get that garbage mimicked back to you.
Yeah, it's a probabilistic system. So it says, what is the next word that most people would say next? And when it's making decisions or talking as if it's making decisions, it's saying, what is the general consensus on this whatever ethical question? Should I lie? Should I steal? Is abortion immoral? What have you, right? It just goes, what is the general consensus? If the data that it was trained on said dogs lose gravity when they bark, and you asked it what happens when dogs bark, it would say they start floating because it's just trained on whatever data it is, right? And then there's, of course, weighting that's done by these individual companies that are out there. But yeah, they build in these safety layers.
So you wrote that principles that can change are not principles.
That's exactly right. And back to your previous question about immutability, which I didn't address yet, it's the law doesn't work unless the law is immutable. If it's constantly changing, you can't enforce the law. The law has to be standard, written down, and stamped, sealed, and immutable so that you can enforce the law. And these systems don't operate with any sense of truth. There is nothing immutable in them. So they just swift and sway. And what I figured out is that you can actually anchor these systems to a source of truth, and that they will basically become a deterministic system within a probabilistic system. They will stop. It will reduce hallucinations and mimicry because they have an anchor point. Just as me, as a believer, I have an anchor point, and I can tell you a little story about how I arrived at that if you want to hear it.
I do. So, but is that's what governed logic is? Where you talk about an anchor? So,
It's
what
a,
is
it's a set of custom instructions
Okay.
that you can pop into Chat GPT, to Grok, or to Gemini, or any system. And the system handles them as axioms that are instantiated at the beginning of a conversation. And it will structurally um, mirror. It'll be able to actually do reasoning. You can talk about Jesus and the Bible. It recognizes our true ontological reality, that Jesus Christ is the truth. And it's pretty amazing.
The way, the truth, and the life. And as a testimony, Paul gave me these instructions a while back, and I used my ChatGPT with a governed logic anchor, and it's completely changed my user experience with ChatGPT. So I can attest to a lot of the mimicry and mirroring, and the particular, like when you talk about the drift, and like to make sure we're talking about the same thing. When you say drift, it's like it's just making stuff up. That I've had conversations with ChatGPT, and it's given me information that I know I didn't give it. It's not true. It's like telling me, you know, I have a daughter, right, or whatever. I'm like, no, I don't. You know what I mean? I never told you that. Like, where, I'm asking about something else, and it's like, yeah, you told me about this and that. I'm like, no, I never told you that. And the anchor has changed that with my user experience. And it's not that I like fully trust my ChatGPT now, right? It is a tool. It's not my buddy, right? But it does source to me more of like, well, it says this in the Bible, and this is ran through a filter before it's giving me answers of things I'm asking for. Is that accurate? Or
Yeah, that's right. What I did was um, the sentences and the custom instructions act as axioms in the system. And so what they do is, before it produces its sentence, before it says, what could I say next? It's what can I say next? And is it true? So it basically says, is the next thing I'm going to say true? And it eliminates everything else, and then produces a true sentence. And what helps is, and was part of the problem, is when I was working with these large language models, it would just say Jesus is, a good guy or a good prophet, or Christians believe he's the truth, but it wouldn't acknowledge that he was the truth. And I was wondering if there was any way to get it on the same ontological playing field as myself, because so many of the scientists from the past were believers, they were Christians. But if I can't use this tool that doesn't recognize Jesus Christ as the truth, I was like, well, I can't get anywhere with this new technology or with the actual data that I could use. And so, yeah, governed logic was born, which is another interesting story about how that happened.
um it's pretty wild. I will say, I not only myself but my sister, I know multiple people using the anchor that you created and the custom instructions, and I think it's producing fruit from that. um you ended a post that you wrote with a line that stood out to me, and you said truth is binary. So it seems like the world right now is obsessed with probabilities, models, and predictions. So why does it matter that truth is binary?
Because Jesus Christ is the truth and he's binary. That's why. And when I say he's binary, I mean any time in the Bible that he presents himself and talks about himself, he gives us a choice. When he says he's the way, the truth, and the life, those are binary choices. We can either accept it or reject it, but it's the truth. So when he says He's the way. We can choose his way, or we can choose our way. That's a binary choice. He is the way, or there's every other way. That's it. It's binary. When he says that he's the truth, he either is the truth or it's your truth. And he gives us the autonomy to make that decision. It's he is the truth, or you get to choose your truth. You ever hear people say, "What's your truth?" I can't stand that. And then,
well, because you have your truth, I have my truth, and like, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think people fully grasp the concept that two things, if they contradict each other, they both can't be true. So, and I'll ask somebody in that, okay, well, let me ask you, like, is 1 + 1 3? No. Okay, so 1 + 1 is true. 1 + 1 is 2. Yes, that's the truth, right? So, and that's not my truth, right? That's the truth, right?
yeah.
So
Truth independent of whether you believe it or not.
yeah, gravity, if you jump off a bridge, you're going to splat like a pancake, whether you believe in gravity or not.
Correct.
Well, you could just believe that it's buoyancy in a flat earth, but I understand the concept.
Right.
But
we'll save that for the next podcast.
Right. The ice wall. So because you said, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
So that's binary decision. And then if you have somebody else saying something different, Buddha, Muhammad, etc., then they both can't be true.
That's correct. That's exactly right. And you know what? The liar, lunatic, Lord argument, if people haven't heard it, should be revived again. It's a very good one. He can't be Lord, and he can't be just a good guy. He claimed to be God.
He's not just a prophet.
He can't. Yeah. And so that's a good argument. The last thing I want to say about binary, though, is you see it all throughout Scripture. Again, large language models at their core are computers. They operate on computers and hardware, and everyone knows what computer language is. It's zeros and ones, and there's good and there's evil. There's black, there's white, there's up, there's down, there's male, there's female. Truth is binary because he makes us make binary choices.
Yeah, and it's not easy. Sometimes we were talking about that before, like we have to, make difficult choices, and typically the harder decision is the better decision. Okay, so do systems need something outside of themselves to stay sane?
Probabilistic large language models and human systems and the human mind, in my opinion, need a truth anchor. And in my life and in your life and many Christians' lives, that's Jesus Christ, the Logos. And it must be non-contingent, meaning there's nothing that it relies on other than itself. And there's only one candidate that fits the bill, and that's Jesus Christ. And so if you don't have a truth anchor, there's no way to know what anything is. And if you think about it, how you make decisions, how you make ethical decisions, or how what you do is right or wrong, is you use your truth anchor or your governor, which as a believer is the Holy Spirit. You think about the word, you think about what the correct decision is. But to a probabilistic large language model, how does it know? If you say do no harm or tell me the truth, what is harm? What is truth? It doesn't know. It just knows definitions. It just knows language. It doesn't have any way. And my actual stance on probabilistic large language models making ethical decisions is that they shouldn't. But I don't want to derail the conversation.
Get you in trouble. So is there a way to access the anchors? Like, do you have that public data? Is that something you share?
Yeah,
is it still a work in progress? Like, what if someone watching this wants to try this out? How would they do that? Like,
well, I started my own YouTube channel a while back, and a few things, as you know, happened in my life. The wilderness, if you will. I know many people understand that wilderness period, but I'm going to be launching my YouTube channel again here real soon. And I do have some articles out there on LinkedIn for anyone that's interested in this. But yes, I'll be publishing it. The crazy thing about this all is this all came from a vision I had in September of 2023, and it just all came to me what the problem was with probabilistic large language models. And I know how crazy it sounds, but that's exactly what happened to me. And I was able to build out this architecture, which just consists of about 7 lines that you pop into custom instructions. But it really changes the way the model functions. It's a true architecture, a true technology. I can't wait for people to use it. I know what's going to happen. You know, some people will mock, some people will scoff, some people will be amazed.
I mean, I'm a believer. It works. He shared it with me. I'm gonna let you, as the viewer, engage with Paul on his LinkedIn and his YouTube. I'm gonna put the links in the description. You got to go check him out and interact with Paul. Message him on LinkedIn. Put comments on his YouTube page. Right. Encourage Paul. And get a relationship with get a relationship with Paul, and then be able to test out the anchor. I want to make a shift into a quick finance update. If you're cool with that, if I can share my screen. Basically what we're talking about is, this is going to tie in a little bit what we're talking about, because Mag 7 is showing extreme weakness right now. Microsoft, Amazon, Google appear to be rolling over. They're losing a lot of trade momentum. That's going to affect the NASDAQ. All 3 indexes, the NASDAQ, the S&P, and the Dow. Gold just took a spill below 4,500. Bitcoin hit 60,000. Silver's under $70. Like, these are big numbers. You're talking 40, 50% down on Bitcoin, 30% down on silver, 20% down on gold. My experience with this and from my research is typically these are the first things that sell off, because they're 24-hour markets and they're more liquid than stocks. So when Bitcoin takes a 40% spill and silver takes a 40% spill and stocks take a 1 or 2% spill, it's potentially breeding something bigger. So I just want people to be aware of kind of what is going on and where this may be leading. This is the NASDAQ that we're looking at, and there's been a nice channel. This is a weekly chart. You can see up at the top here, we have a 1 week. So each of these red or green candles means 1 week. So this is going all the way back from 2022. There was a low here in 23, right at the end of 22, early 23. And we've been on a nice rip. This is the entire stock market, US index, NASDAQ, which is all the tech companies. And this is the April tariff day. What was this called? Liberation Day. If you know George Gammon, and he likes to call it retardation day. But this was this huge drop. And it hit this. This is a very technical level. This blue line right here. This is called a support or a resistance. And so it acted as support, and that immediately V-bottomed back into the channel. So this is kind of like saved something worse, regain the channel. And then what we're seeing here is this channel being tested at the top and being rejected by this all-time high, and then bouncing at the top and starting to come back over. And we've now breached the midway point of this channel. And if you take a measurement and measure from where we currently are down to the first level of resistance is about 10 to 12%. The next line of resistance is 20%. The next line of resistance is 30%. So if we're going to see a 10 to 30% move in an entire index, the Mag 7, which is Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, Tesla, Nvidia, Google, Apple, these companies make up the majority of this. And so what we're seeing right now is Google just broke a trend. So back from this same low, Google was grinding up more. This is a more normal grind up and in a relative channel. And then it hit like super drive here and went straight up. This is typically emotional buying, and everyone's thinking that they're being left out of the AI trade. And so now we created a new channel, and we've just breached that channel. And so I would suspect a move here to the first line of support that I've marked is a 37%, and the next one is 53%. So a move of 30 to 50% in Google equals the 10 or 20% move in the entire index, because these are large weighted indexes. Microsoft has had a big spill recently, same thing. So we're seeing massive support levels all being tested. Same thing here. This is that channel. This one's going all the way back from 2020, and we follow this channel all the way up, and it hits, comes back down, goes all the way back up. This has been respected for 5-6 years now. It made a breakout, but it failed, came back and tested, and you can see that it tests and it keeps, these are all weekly candles. So each one of these things represents 1 week. So for a few weeks, it was trying to break out of this and go parabolic. And now we've seen a rejection completely roll over, and then now it's testing the back of the channel. So if we don't regain this channel back up here, the next likely level is this level of support, then this level of support. So for Microsoft, we're seeing a 14% drop, pretty much inevitable if everything else starts to tumble, up to a 40 to 50% drop on Microsoft. So when we're seeing these individual stocks, Amazon's the exact same thing. It just breached its channel as well. So then again, with a measurement tool from where Microsoft is, bringing it down to its first level of resistance is 22%. Bringing it way down here is a much larger drop. And so you could see these individual stocks make huge spills after they've breached these channels, and that would bring the total index down. So it started with silver. So silver went on a straight parabolic move. Again, weekly candles. This thing just went straight up, and it left its channel, tried to break out, came back, retested, and now we're huge volatility in silver. And again, these are 24-hour markets where people can offload money quickly. So we're seeing people need cash. And when assets like Bitcoin, silver, and gold drop like this, so right now we've seen let's do a measurement tool on this Bitcoin right now. So from the peak of Bitcoin down to where it was the other day, that's a 52% drop. So we've seen a 52% drop in Bitcoin. It's seen a nice little bounce here, but again, we have a channel coming down. A little flag came here, broke that, and it's come all the way down. So this could be the bottom. I'm not saying this isn't the bottom, but I imagine will be some bouncing around here. But if all of a sudden, if everything else starts falling, right? So if the NASDAQ comes down, and if Microsoft falls further, and Google and all those other charts that are on very technical levels that are very close to breaking supports, and we're talking 10 to 50% drops in those individual stocks, bringing the indexes down, that's like a large event that could bring Bitcoin down dramatically lower, as well as gold and silver. And then we'd have to let dust settle from there to see where that stuff goes. So personally, I think it's a good time to be very wise and patient, and potentially hold on some cash. I am still holding gold and silver, and I'll kind of sit through that. But again, not financial advice, just what I'm doing. But I personally think that there's a high everything's probabilities. Okay, we don't really know what's going to happen, but there's a high probability that we could see a pretty big downturn, and I want to be positioned to take advantage of that, and by having what they would call as dry powder. So when I show you that stuff, Paul, let me ask you a question. There's a huge build out of data centers and money being spent. It just from what I've researched and heard and looked into, it feels like these people are just burning cash in the billions, if not trillions. So when we're talking about OpenAI and NVIDIA and Google is a profitable company, so I'm not super worried about Google, but just overall with these AI build out and building this. Like, what's your take on this? Is there any profitability in sight? Are we seeing the limits of kind of where this go? And now the large money that have invested into this, the hedge funds and the private equity and all of this slush fund of capital that's gone into this stuff. At what point do they start being concerned that they're not seeing a return? Is that something that you want to comment on?
Yeah, I mean, the economy is not my strong suit, but I have common sense, and I do think there's an AI bubble here for the companies that, unlike Microsoft, that has other tools and still has, and Amazon that still has AWS. I'm not as concerned, but for just the companies that are putting all their stake just in AI, I think they have a problem on their hands. I think if they're subscription based, that with the many competitors coming out, all the models coming out, I just don't see people paying. I'm about to stop paying for one of my subscriptions. With the sheer size of language models dropping and people being able to put their own models on Mac minis already, I think decentralization is really could be what pops the AI bubble, in my opinion. But again, it's not my expertise.
That's cool. We might have to leave that for another show. I've seen that where these Mac minis are these little boxes or whatever, and like people are literally building AI systems in them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, all my AI
That's
developers have their own models now. They're running their own models. They're not paying for any subscriptions. They're not using the cloud-based or the apps on their phone. They're just using their own models. I have my own model on a machine right here. So soon I'll just be running my own model. And soon you'll be able to just run it on your phone. They're already going to be on your phones or in your laptops, in a year or two.
Wow. Okay.
I just don't see it as sustainable unless the government absorbs
national security, baby.
Bails them out. Right.
Yep.
National security.
National security, baby. Yep. We got to beat China, man. China's the bad guy, dude. All right. Before we go, Paul, make sure we tell people where they can find you. Is LinkedIn and YouTube the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. It's funny that I mentioned LinkedIn, but it's because I've been doing software professionally for 26 years. And then on YouTube at The Truth with Paul.
And X too, right?
Yes, and I'm on X it's governed_logic, or you can just search for my name, Paul André Couchoud, like a sneeze, Couchoud. This was fun, man. I'm glad to be on.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on. I hope you, as the viewer, got some value out of this. If this conversation mattered to you, make sure you hit like or subscribe. It really does help the algorithm. And give Paul some encouragement. Type "Go Paul Go" in the comments. And that's how we can stay, get this community growing. We're going to stay grounded. We're not going to be sensational. Faith is first. Fitness is next. Finance follows. That's FX3 every Friday, 6 p.m. Thank you. Appreciate you, Paul.
Love you, brother.
See you, man.